Hey, welcome to the Moonello Show. I'm Jason.
I'm Matt.
That's us.
Hello, everyone. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the impact of software development on the job market, including the rise of remote work and the skills businesses need to hire in the software development space. So it could be interesting, those of you out there that are running companies and need to hire either internal software developers or you're looking to outsource work, what types of things you should be looking for, what types of things software development candidates should have.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. First, let's talk about some things that are happening in the universe. OpenAI has recently released their ChatGPT model into their API. So beforehand, I saw a lot of people like trying to hack ChatGPT in some way. There's a lot of repos out there where people were trying to like take what ChatGPT is doing and implement it somehow into their own software things, kind of like what Bing has done, but officially.
Right.
So now ChatGPT is available for people to do that legitimately instead of in hacky, weird, strange ways. So I would expect to see a lot more like of that in your applications, and like newer applications coming out that have that type of stuff built in.
Right, that feature, instead of having like 1D or 2D or flat chatbot conversations, it's going to be more conversational, more human-like. So that's, really, really cool. Excited to see what people are going to come out with.
Yeah, it's interesting that comes out like 2 weeks after they implement it into Bing. I find that kind of, I know that they're different models. Like this one is 3.5 turbo that they've made available through the API, and Bing uses 4 or something like that. So it's an unreleased version of it. But I don't know. I just find that interesting that they're so close to each other. They're making it available for everybody.
Like, you think it's too close, or you think it should have been
I don't know.
Sooner, before?
I feel like they might have wanted Bing to marinate a little bit.
Yeah.
Like,
I would think Microsoft would want to marinate for much longer.
Yeah. Like, is 2 weeks enough time for Bing to establish itself as like the premier ChatGPT implementation?
Right.
Like the honeymoon phase hasn't even like gotten to its midpoint yet. Not everybody has access to it, so not everybody can really see what Bing can do with ChatGPT. And now all of a sudden, like every developer and their sister can implement that into their own app in their own way.
Yep.
For 0.002 cents per token or something like
that.
Per
1,000 tokens?
Per 1,000 tokens?
Yeah.
Like dirt cheap stuff.
Yeah,
like,
dirt cheap. Yeah.
Yeah, like real simple.
Right. I'm kind of excited too about the text-to-speech, the Whisper model. So I'm curious to see how that gets implemented and use cases that come out of that. There's a lot of voice-related devices that we all have, even around our homes and our cars.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see like how the world kind of adapts to that.
Yeah. Can you imagine like third-party, like Google Homes and or versions of that, right? Like so far it's been we're dominated by Siri, Alexa, and Google. Hopefully it doesn't all go off. Sorry.
Yeah. All the device lights are turning on.
I know we've got 2 of those in this room right now. But yeah, like imagine like a third party one run by OpenAI.
Yeah.
And what with ChatGPT, like what could that do, and how could it compare to our current implementations by the big guys?
Right.
That'd be cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Future is now.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard, if you drive a Ford vehicle, soon, potentially, who knows how long in the future this is going to take, but you miss a couple payments and your Ford vehicle can almost auto repo itself.
Yeah. Can you imagine like
crazy
being in a situation where you wake up and you see your car driving away, but there's no thief in it? It's like the car is driving itself.
Right. Like, you're behind a couple months and you've gotten those letters from Ford, or maybe it's more than a few months.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to get like random phone calls, and you would expect at some point to see your vehicle hitched to like some random tow truck at some point. But no, it's reversing down the drive,
just kind of driving itself
quietly, kind of going away.
That's kind of a good point too. It's an electric car, so like you're not even going to hear it. Start. You won't hear a truck outside your door. You won't hear a whee of the the bed lifting up and all the chains and stuff like that, you'd never know.
You'd
You'd
never
think
know.
that your car was stolen.
Yeah, you call and report it stolen.
Yeah, so we contacted Ford, and you owe a lot of bills.
Right. I think at that point you'd probably know if your car's not in your driveway.
Yeah,
I guess it'd have to be in the driveway, right? Because it's not going to open up the garage door if it's parked in the garage.
Right. Oh, that's
right?
kind of a good point too.
Or if there's another car parked behind it in the drive.
But as soon as you open your garage door, as soon
It's
as
gone.
that thing
It's
is
gone.
unobstructed, and be like, I'm free. But you would have to know that like that's going to happen.
Yeah, you have to have
you buy that car, you know that Ford is doing that type of thing. Like,
right. Yeah,
you know if you don't pay,
right.
you can't just forget to pay 4 months and forget that your car can auto drive.
Right. That's crazy.
Yeah, this is kind of a weird like natural flow of how automated things are going, right? Like, I don't know, you think that cars can do that. What else? What else can automate itself to shut down if your bills aren't paid?
Wow.
That kind of brings up and we had talked about this in jest about other ways of doing that, but what other things could just shut down that are required that you've purchased or whatever just because you haven't paid the bill? Like, I mean, obviously like utilities and cell phone services and stuff like that can happen,
those shut down, but what like, other
can I don't know, can your phone, like if you don't pay your phone bill, can they turn your, like, not just your phone service, but like your phone?
Yeah.
Like, oh no, you didn't pay it, so sorry, we're gonna brick your phone.
Or if you have like the smart locks on your house, right, and after a period of time, like if you're unable to, make your mortgage, like can they access like those smart locks and just like no longer allow you access into your house? Like that would be.
So imagine like you get a mortgage through a bank, and the bank is like, we'll give you a discount on your mortgage if you let us install
these
our smart locks that you can use. It's safe, it's secure. We back it. Somebody breaks in your stuff, like we've got insurance for that. But then if you don't pay your mortgage or you default on your mortgage or something like that, it's in the fine print.
Right.
We'll lock you out of your house.
Wow.
Hope
crazy.
You don't have any pets in there. Hope your child isn't home alone. Right.
Yeah, hopefully Scruffy's got a full bowl of food there.
Yeah, which is another point to the Ford stuff. Like, what if?
Yeah.
Okay, like what if you're loading your car, right, and you get your kid in the car, and you're like, oh, I forgot something in the house. So you go in to get your house, you come back, your car is gone, and your kids are gone because they're going to the Ford facility.
Right. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of
yikes.
Feature requirements that need to be defined on that. Like I assume they'd probably gain access to seat sensors to see if there's anyone sitting in the seats, right?
But I mean, those seat sensors are in the front seat. Are they necessarily in the back seat?
They might quickly just add them in there. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's probably a feature on like probably some high end related vehicles that have sensors all over the place. Yeah. So I'd assume that it's it's available, and I'm curious to see other OEMs if they follow suit and go that route too.
Well, if we've learned anything about patents lately, it's that they're going to have to pay for that.
Yeah, they will have to pay to use that license.
Yeah, so it's I don't know. I kind of interesting that Ford was the first one to strike with that. Like Tesla didn't do it, and they've been on the forefront of self-driving for forever. But I mean, they also don't do business the same way. They have different clientele right now. Like, I think Ford is kind of specifically targeting a more wide audience of users. So like Tesla, it's like you got to have a lot of money really to get a Tesla, and they're probably much less likely to default on their loans. So maybe that just wasn't a concern for them.
Yeah, maybe.
Whereas Ford, like,
their audience,
they've got to target
market.
their audience to everybody who can afford a car,
right?
And maybe the people on the lower end of that are more likely to get their cars repossessed.
Yeah, and maybe those aren't necessarily high end vehicles.
Yeah,
but
those are your Tauruses and stuff. Your Ford Fiesta.
Auto
drive.
Auto drive. Rolling up in the windows.
I have to manually roll up my windows, but my car can auto drive back to the dealer.
That's right. Oh man. All right. So yeah, well, let's get into today's episode. So we're gonna, quickly run through kind of the changing landscape of software development, over the last 5 years, from a business standpoint, and then also we're gonna discuss, in that piece, how it has evolved, the rise of remote work. Remote work is a huge topic. COVID kind of sprung that into everybody's stratosphere.
Yeah.
But it's continued. As COVID has kind of subdued a little bit here, the rise of remote work has still, climbed to the front of everybody's stratosphere. So we'll talk that through. And also some hiring processes that companies have had to, change and adapt, just based on the rise of remote work. And then also, the rise of low code, no code, along with custom software development and how that's kind of affected the job market. So we talk about how things have evolved, over the past, 5 years ish in the changing landscape of software development. There's a few things that come to mind. Obviously, we just kind of brought it up, the rise of low code and no code, in addition to how much custom software has advanced. But if we kind of touch on low code, no code here for a little bit, and kind of discuss, what low code and no code has allowed other people within a business in a business to do, in addition to what software developers have been able to do. So, Jason, what do you think? Low code let's talk about no code here for a little bit, and how that has evolved and how that's allowed other people inside of a company to do things.
Right. Well, I mean, we've kind of discussed this before, but with no code solutions, even low code solutions, those things provide a way for businesses to get access to tools that they would otherwise have had to build themselves. Right. So now you can have people who work for you who aren't software developers creating things that would normally have required a software developer to do, really, right?
So, and that has caused the rise of the term citizen developer.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. Like, you can imagine the citizen developer was the person on your team that you were like, hey, we need our Excel sheet to do something very specific. I need you to look up how to do this stuff. And they would do a Google search and be like, ooh, Visual Basic, ooh, macros.
Yeah.
And so, like, this wasn't a developer necessarily, but it was somebody who had the smarts to go in and just like figure out how to really basically put together like really bad written code in Visual Basic, which isn't always the easiest thing to work with anyway, and like come up with something that would work. Or at least that's my envisionment of what was that, citizen developer?
Citizen developer,
Citizen developer would do.
Yep.
So like the natural expansion of that is somebody who can take a low code tool and create something with it better than a normal person on the team might be able to do. Because some of those low code tools, like it's not all just drag and drop stuff. There's some processes that need to happen, and it's not just code. It's like understanding if-else statements, like understanding those logical ways of doing things.
Right. So like, understanding business processes, understanding groupings of data, understanding database structures.
Yeah, that too. Like in a very low level of it, Slack has something called what's it called? It's their workflows. Slack has workflows that you can build into it, and they allow people to do things that code would normally do. Like you might be able to build a plugin for Slack that would do something like this, or an API that integrates into Slack that does this. But the flow would allow you to do basic like if-else structures, which like programming is basically all if-else then structures, right? So like, but in order to use those, you have to like understand how that structure is. You have to understand that logic, and like not every person who has access to Slack is going to understand like really how that if-else then structure works and how to be able to use it. So there's still software aspects that need to be known to use those low code tools.
Right. Yep. So, and there's also, cloud computing, which has enabled, greater scalability and flexibility inside of an organization. We talked about, mobile applications we bring up on this podcast quite a bit. We build them. There's a lot that are out there, millions of applications that are out there on mobile devices. Even, if you look at projections through 2025, 2027, they're still predicting, I think Gartner's still predicting 500 million more mobile apps are going to be developed, right? So that's crazy to think that there's going to be that many more applications living in these Play stores, but it just means that over the next 3, 4, or 5 years, or even like the past 5 years, and you look forward the next 5 years, mobile application development, mobile app developers are still in high demand, right? There's still a lot of things that can be done through mobile app technology. The outreach of AI right now, we talked about ChatGPT going into OpenAI, that's now available through APIs.
Think of all the different types of apps that companies are going to be thinking about building, and you need people to build those apps. Right. So not only do you need people who understand mobile app development, but also people who kind of understand where that machine learning and AI stuff is and how to use it,
how to plug it in.
Yeah, how to plug it in, how to reliably like build those models or feed those models information.
Yep. And then we'll talk, of course, the rise of our artificial intelligence, right? Machine learning, right? We brought that up. We've kind of talked that through. That's kind of been a growing, evolving technology that's certainly becoming more mainstream now, thanks to OpenAI. And
you might be able to throw blockchain into that as well, because that's even though that's kind of like simmered down a little bit, it's still in the background. Like there's still a need for decentralized stuff. Or at least a desire for decentralized stuff. Stuff is the best word I can think of for it right now. Stuff.
Well, some dry stuff is, agile methodologies, right? That's another rising piece of software development that's going on, right? Agile, right? That means that we're no longer building applications in waterfall related processes, faster speed to market. You're building MVPs, minimum viable products. You're working in a small core team in sprints. You're having Scrum meetings. Companies that adapt agile methodologies are companies that advance and enhance faster and quicker.
Yeah. I not that I'm out searching, but I don't think I've seen a developer job posting that hasn't mentioned having agile methodology as part of if not a requirement, that at least like one of those best it's really good if you have it, it's recommended, or at least we use it. So that puts you a one up on other candidates that might not have that experience.
Right. And then as we talk about the rise of remote work, that's kind of happened. I mean, this is across all industries. It's not just, software technology. I mean, this is in every single industry. Of course, when the economy was shut down during COVID, and then coming out of that, there was a lot of discussions about, do we even need this office?
Yeah.
Can our work be done remotely, right?
My previous place of business, they had like an entire floor to themselves. And, COVID hit, and I was hired after COVID hit, but they were like, why go back to the office? Like, we're spending all this money for lights and stuff. And our people are as productive, if not more productive than they were before. Like, why even? And we've outgrown our office. So like a lot of that, it's kind of weird, like during COVID for a company to have grown. So good on them. But like, why go back? Why go back if people are just as productive? I mean, there certainly are pitfalls to remote work and blended teams too, like teams that have remote workers and non-remote workers. So that's kind of a thing to consider. Like, imagine if you're on a team that is blended, and this happened in my previous place of work too. Like, some people were starting to go back to the office on a temporary, case by case basis. They were invited there, or they asked to go there. Those people get one-on-one time with like managers and higher up people that are there. Whereas the remote workers, they're just, they're available on Teams or Slack or something, but like they're not in the boss's view. They're not in the CEO's view.
Yeah.
So like,
out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. So like the natural extension of that, of course, is, COVID is sort of clearing up, or at least it's getting better. But now with the global amount of workers that you could get, you might have a team that has developers on the West Coast, the East Coast, Canada and Mexico, for example. And like, how do you manage that with an internal team while also being fair to all the people who are remote working? How do they get the same purview? It's almost like
benefits and perks. Yeah.
There's different, and I think we'll talk about this later, but there's different soft skills that are required for remote work, not only on the part of the worker, but on the part of the manager, to just make sure that like communication is equal between remote workers and non-remote workers.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it certainly is. You get back to like the office. So like part of my background, I worked for a large global software agency for over a decade. And one of the things that, really stood out to me working at the company was, we had offices all over, different countries, all over the United States. And you get shifted and worked in different accounts, right? And then you get to go to the other offices, and the teams we all kind of came from different offices. Sometimes a specific account would be run out of one office, and, they might not hire outside developers or software engineers or managers to come work in that office. They might bring people from other offices in the larger agency that are either rolling off an account or want to work on another account. So they'd be able to travel, and I see all these offices, and these offices were just absolutely amazing. I mean, beautiful, full gourmet kitchens and libraries.
Yeah.
And, it's just, now it's like, yes. I mean, even during that time, like, yeah, we all could have done our work from our homes or wherever we want to work. But yet these companies all have, $1 million offices in multiple cities and multiple countries. And now it's, you hear, some of these offices are no longer even there anymore. Like not necessarily this company, but, you hear in the news, other companies are, no longer having physical footprints or, physical brick and mortar.
Right. Well, because it's technically unneeded, really, right?
Yeah. When you look at it at the end of the day, if it's one of your largest expenses, it's almost an easy one.
Yeah. Yeah. But there's also typically a lot of people in the leadership positions are a little more old school than otherwise. So they prefer that face-to-face because it's the way that they've probably been doing business for 30, 40 years. And, 20 years ago, a pizza party was a way to incentivize your workers to be happy and do good work. But that's changing generations, changing way of doing things. And I don't know, like we were watching that WeWork commercial earlier.
This is how we work now.
This is how we work now campaign, where they're basically like incentivize it. It's really good, but they're basically like talking about how remote work is possible, and you can build teams from all over the place. It's like and to not do that is antiquated. There are a lot of antiquated people who might not really see it that way.
Right.
I don't know, kind of interesting. I'm trying not to be like offensive to to the generational differences, but they exist, right? They're real.
Right. Yeah. I mean, even us. I mean, we're a full remote team, but we still have, when we're not meeting with clients or working collectively in our own homes or wherever we want to work, we still have co-working spaces that we go to, and we collaborate, and we have R&D sessions, and we roll up our sleeves and just
I wonder how many of those companies could benefit from going to or like having temporary office space at a co-working facility instead of
buying their own office and furnishing it. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I wonder how many companies are doing that. I mean, ours, it just happened naturally.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot to the whole like remote work thing. I mean, I guess like, not to go too much on a tangent, but this kind of relates to hiring. Payment, how much you pay people is very specific to the area in which you operate and in which they live.
There's different sales tax in different states. Yeah. For sure.
So like,
income tax.
For example, a software company in Silicon Valley is going to pay their people a lot more than, not to be offensive to Ohio, but Podunk, Ohio is not going to pay as much. But if your a company in Ohio has remote work and you try to hire somebody who lives in San Diego, you have to pay them to be able to live in San Diego unless you're asking them to move to Ohio. And then then you don't really get like the remote workers that you want. You kind of defeat the purpose if you can only hire people who live in places that fit what you can hire them for, I guess.
Right.
So it's interesting how all of that is changing, where once we used to be so local with the way that our businesses were structured, and now like you as the business owner, you have to be concerned with who you hire, because maybe you can't afford, the best of the best, because they live in San Diego or New York or something like that.
Right.
So
right.
It's interesting. Glad I don't make those decisions.
Yep. So let's talk about the skills businesses need to hire for in software development space, right? So we've kind of covered a lot about low code, no code, custom software. We talked about kind of like how software development has kind of evolved with AI, with machine learning, with cloud computing. But let's talk about what skills businesses need to be thinking about, right? Maybe it's not all very technical, right? If we kick off with one, it's a lot about shifting towards a more collaborative setting, and an agile approach to software development.
Yeah, we kind of talked about this a little earlier when we mentioned soft skills, but like soft skills are very important in all areas, but especially software development. Those soft skills are expanding. Like some of those soft skills, communication is one big part of it, but that was like face-to-face communication and easy communication and fast communication and efficient communication. Now it's what I had mentioned about the remote teams. It's making sure that you're able to connect with people virtually.
Yep.
Whereas, because face-to-face communication is so easy. There's obviously you can see this through video and stuff, but it's a lot easier when you're in front of somebody to pick up on their cues, like their what's the word I'm looking for? It's their nonverbal communications type, their mannerisms, exactly. So like when you're looking at somebody from a camera, you see their face obviously, but like there's a whole way that the body presents itself when you're communicating. Like hands are moving, even like I do this with my feet a lot, and that's a cue to somebody that I'm thinking or working or processing through something.
Right.
You don't see that on a video necessarily. You don't get to see all that stuff. So there's like,
we could put your feet on camera if you want.
They're on camera right now. That's why I have all these wonderful socks. I was waiting to see at which episode you would bring up socks, so I could just talk about how my socks have squids on them right now.
Jason loves the socks. Yep.
I do like socks.
Yep.
You'll see pizza, you'll see pineapples, you'll see
socks
all sorts of things on the socks. Thanks for bringing up my socks.
Yeah, no problem. Are you processing? Are you thinking?
I
am. Awesome. Yeah. So, we need to be thinking about, another skill or other things that companies need to be thinking about when they're hiring is really proficiency in modern software development, right? Agile and DevOps, right? DevOps is so important. DevSecOps, we talked about that before. Just DevOps is development and IT operations kind of slammed into one. It's no longer, even 5 years ago, it was, slap a website together, or slap a front end, application together, and then you would pass it off to an engineer who would then do all the DevOps related things. Mm-hmm. And really, the whole ecosystem of, front end kind of separated from back end seems to be more or less, those are kind of closing in, and they're really becoming software engineers who can scaffold out a front end using some type of a framework, or they custom build something. And then they also can design and build and deploy to the cloud, which cloud computing is another proficiency that businesses need.
Yeah,
cloud computing is huge.
It's. I'm just like thinking of our own experience with AWS, and like, beforehand we're not AWS experts by any means, but AWS can have experts, which is kind of like a bonkers thing. Like there's so much to all that AWS can do. It's almost like you
Amazon
can dedicate
Web Services,
Amazon Web Services. You can dedicate your entire career to learning Amazon Web Services.
Absolutely.
Like there are positions that people have in software companies that are specifically Amazon Web Service engineers.
There are AWS advocates that get hired into companies when they're building a huge a huge application needs to go into the cloud. And it's not really like building one huge application. If you think about it, there are microservices and sub services that are running functions and processes and IT related initiatives that are off running in the cloud that are all powering multiple applications, multiple large applications. So you might have an AWS advocate or an AWS software engineer who doesn't work at your company, who is an advocate of AWS that might get hired in from a temporary basis. You could hire someone, you could scale up the knowledge of your team, you can hire an advocate, right? Like AWS is huge. Google
Firebase,
Google Cloud Platform is huge. Microsoft Azure is huge. I mean, Azure is probably as large as AWS, if not larger. Just what Azure is able to do, right? There's so many things that can be done in the cloud of all three of those companies.
Yeah. How much of a leg up does it give one software developer over another to have that under your belt?
I mean, if you're kind of good at all three, that's really a good thing. If you're very specifically focused on either one of the three, that in and of itself is still a good thing.
Yeah.
It gives companies options. It gives the ability, backup. It gives the ability for a business to go after accounts that they've never been able to go after if they haven't been able to scale up on Google Cloud as much as they've scaled up on AWS. Sometimes companies, if you try to go to win business, sometimes companies will dictate our application needs to run in Google Cloud or our application needs to run in AWS. And if you don't have, the skills on your team or the people, right, of course you can go hire real quick, but at that moment, right, you need to feel confident enough to pull off the project and win the trust of the future client.
Yeah, that's crazy. And just like you'd mentioned, how many different applications run on Amazon Web Services or some other thing. Like when those things break, you need someone who knows how to figure out why those things broke, right? And that's where some of those like real in-depth experts can go in and figure those things out.
Yeah, those real in-depth experts are going to set up auto scaling from the very beginning, right? They're going to set up monitoring. They're going to set up, load balancing. They're going to set up all that so that if there are problems in the future, those problems don't shut down a business, right? The problems are basically taken care of because the problem of itself kind of shifts and balances to other servers that get up and running immediately that are scaled and ready. So to the end user, there's no problem, right? But to the internal team, to the business, oh wow, let's now dig into why this happened. But there's no, business revenue generating impact.
Yeah.
But it's cloud computing is huge, and then we talked about software engineers being able to design and deploy, infrastructure and architecture to the cloud. Like that's important. It's no longer, hey, could you build this UI? Could you create this landing page? Right now it's, hey, could you build this landing page and then also, deploy it through pipelines to Microsoft Azure? It's like, yeah.
Sure.
Google
and Stack Overflow.
How do I do this? ChatGPT, could you help me with this?
Might not be the best of ideas to do that right now.
We're reminiscing our software careers from a decade ago. And then also, proficiencies. Businesses are looking for people who understand machine learning. Right? There's gobs and gobs and gobs of large, big data that companies want to sift through, and if you are good at sifting through large or writing software that can sift through large amounts of data, that's huge. Data is huge for companies, right?
Yeah.
That's important. And then also, creating custom software applications, right? Like, you can stitch together a really nice application using frameworks, using some low code technologies. But if you have the ability or your company has the ability to just create something from scratch to meet a unique business requirement, that is huge. That is big. That helps companies get ahead quickly. That makes companies get out there and provide their unique solution to their audience and to their market.
Or to create patents that allow them to. We're going to talk. We need to have a whole episode about this patent stuff. But
we got some crazy insight on a patent. Well, maybe next episode, or maybe the next one after that.
Yeah, but anyway, like you create a unique process that isn't being done, and you patent it, and then you let everybody know what it is. Oh, by the way, if you want to do that,
right,
come on over. I'll let you use my software, absolutely, or my process.
right. And then, we brought this up before, but imagine you're not a software developer. You've never built software ever in your life, and you're not going after a software development position within a company, right? You might be going into marketing or operations or legal or maybe even IT, but not code related. You might get asked, "Hey, have you built any dashboards, or have you built any admin portals, or have you used any low code solutions to do things?" Basically, companies could be probing for, is this person a citizen developer? Have they done any citizen developer initiatives in the past?
Yeah, or even as a preemptive thing, just having that behind your belt, and then being smart enough or aware enough to use those skills to try and improve a department that you're in, or to do something of that nature, is just a way to get ahead just in general. I mean, I've had those experiences with previous places that I've worked with, where I've, speaking to the Slack web or the flows again, like completely use that to streamline a chat interface with a sales team, for example, to just let them, click a button in a Slack channel, and then it brings up a form where they can type in their request, and it just shoots to the right person in the right place, and they can just respond with emojis to indicate like whether they're looking to get more information or to just like finish the request and stuff like that. It's like that alone was able to save our sales teams a lot of headache of just like typing in all the things that they wanted to in a chat, hoping that they got all the right information, instead of just being presented with a form right in their chat box with Slack, where they're prompted for exactly the information that they need, and then it just goes to exactly the right person that needs to see it. Like that's the type of thing that gets you ahead. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, that was a fun thing to do.
Yep. And then, talking about citizen developers, creating simple applications with low code or no code. And then also, as skills that businesses are looking for, right? And this, maybe this is obvious, but they want to make sure that the people that they're going to hire can evolve with new technologies that come out, right? Out of nowhere, towards the end of November, OpenAI came out of nowhere with this ChatGPT, with their API at the time, right? And, the companies who had people within their business with the forward thinking of, oh, this is where this is going, I can understand this technology immediately, this is great, look at what I built. Those are the companies that get ahead. Those are the companies that, are looking to make a real big difference.
And in some cases, those are the people that get to keep their jobs. I was listening to a podcast the other day, a business podcast, and
was it ours?
No, it wasn't ours. Oh. I listened to more than just us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But the host was talking about a company he was familiar with, where it was a marketing agency basically that copyright, and they do copywriting and stuff like that. ChatGPT comes out. Suddenly the owner realizes that you can just get ChatGPT to create these things for you, like dropped most of his department because he didn't need the people anymore. Kept like one or two people who were using the ChatGPT or brought it up to him and showed that they could use it, and they're the ones that got to keep their jobs because he just didn't need the people, because he thought that ChatGPT was doing the work for him the way that he wanted it. So learn the new technology, you get to keep your job.
Or you get to, the doors open in other directions. You never know, like what that's going to land you. I mean, I had a career shift because the auto industry was going down, right? Back in the, late 2000s. No, it'd be 2005.
It's like 2000, right before 2008, where the bailouts happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was a mechanical engineer, as I mentioned before, working for the auto industry, and 2008 happened, and massive amounts of layoffs for auto workers in our region, right? In the Midwest, right? We're directly impacted. I was directly impacted, but a door opened for a whole new career, something I never even realized I even liked or even cared about. All of a sudden, legitimately on the exact same day, ironically enough, and I've had a completely different career. So you never know. Like, it's sad to hear about all these layoffs that are happening in, specifically in the tech industry, or really just across the board in any industry whatsoever.
Yeah.
But the hope is that these people have all landed on their feet. They've either reinvented themselves, they've started their own business, they've quickly got hired in at somewhere else, and maybe that other company is far better than the company that they were at.
Yeah.
Right.
It's real hard to tell somebody when they get laid off that, these opportunities exist.
Yeah.
Because they're really in there. I remember I was really torn apart when it happened to me previously. But reinvent, relearn, get new skills, like
be open.
It's really like we kind of have a similar experience in that. Like if I had never been laid off from that previous position that I had, this wouldn't be happening for sure, because I'd still be there. I never would have gotten really professionally deep into development and business and stuff like that. So
right. Yeah, you never know.
Lay off your people so they can go do great things.
Yeah.
Don't do that, please. Matt, don't lay off your people. I'm doing great things with Matt.
That's right. That's right. We're doing great things for our clients. So we brought up soft skills earlier, right?
Yeah.
And especially with the rise of remote work, and we kind of brought this up a little bit too. It's like when teams were all kind of sitting in an office together, we could talk about software development, but of course this is for any other department, right? Like everybody kind of meets, we all kind of sit near each other. We start talking about what you did on the weekend. Maybe you live near each other and you hung out on the weekend, right? You come in, you work, and body language, you can tell if someone's not having a good day, or just people's personalities are just specific, right? And that, and you can almost build a team around, making sure the whole team itself is good, rather than everybody on the team all having the same personality and struggling with one particular thing. Then you're going to have to constantly be, working with them. So especially now with remote work, where people aren't sitting next to each other, they're home working, or they're working at co-working facilities, or they're kind of just spread around.
Coffee shops.
Yeah. Businesses need to, realize soft skills in people, right? Because, you talk about it, people need to effectively communicate. People are joining virtual calls, right? When people were sitting in meetings before in physical offices, they would the ones that didn't really communicate very well would kind of just like hide off to the side, let everyone else on the team kind of talk. Even if they were the ones like did the work and like they're happy about the work that they did, they wouldn't even speak up, right? So effective communication is, of course, right? Communication, everybody needs that. And then problem solving, right? Not just in the sense of, solving software problems, but problem solving across the realm of, we got a new team member on the team, and maybe there's problems that arise from that, or new business processes come into play, new ways of doing things, solving those problems.
What solutions can we find for customers, and how do we go after new business, and all those types of things?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that soft skill, adaptability, right? To being able to adapt to those new business processes, being able to adapt to new team members, or even team members leaving the team.
Yeah.
Right. That's also something that we don't really talk much about. Teams, in a way, grieve in a way when they lose a team member, right? And the team member moves on to either gets promoted to another department, or leaves the company to work somewhere else, or changes careers, right?
Or to adapt to new tools and stuff, like especially throughout this whole COVID thing, like suddenly you couldn't go back to work. Like at the very beginning, there was no, we weren't in remote work mode. We didn't understand what that looked like transitioning from an in-house, like in office workspace, to suddenly you have to be virtual. Being able to adapt to that, like you can, in my previous employer, you could definitely tell the people that were good at adapting to those things, because like they didn't skip a beat when they had to start working from home. Other people, like they weren't able to make those adjustments, or like they weren't able to perform in the same way as fast, because they just weren't used to like being at home with kids screaming, or like finding a space at home to kind of do that too. So yeah, adaptability. I think we've learned how powerful adaptability is in the workplace just from the last 2 years.
Right. Another big soft skill is time management. So you use working within a team, right? People would start to kind of stand up and be like, okay, yeah, it's time for lunch, right? Hey, let's kind of go grab some food. Where now it's you're kind of working on your own, and we talk about 9 to 5 really doesn't exist anymore, right? If you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So like obviously 9 to 5, people are starting to work outside of that. Like suddenly you're not required to be in one physical location all the time. So you can do your work outside of 9 to 5s, especially if you're not doing like direct customer work, like you're not interacting with people. Who cares if you've got your stuff done at 2 a.m. in the morning? It's done. It's what the point of being at work is working, and the work that you produce, and the work I produced at 2 a.m. is the same as the work I would have produced at 1 p.m.
Yeah, as long as you're available during the drafted normal business hours, as long as you're available
for questions and help your teammates.
Someone but even needs something, right?
Even the drafted 9 to 5 isn't real, because I mean, think of, we're on the East Coast, pretty much Eastern time zone. Our 9 to 5 is different than somebody in California, which is different than somebody in France, which is different than somebody in China and India, and like their 9 to 5 is completely different than ours are. So I'm not saying like get rid of all of your boundaries and work 24 hours a day, but the ability to understand that other people on your team are working at different times, and knowing when they're available, when their work will become available, and being able to like pull that all into your own due dates and responsibilities. It's a new evolving soft skill. Not to say that like this didn't exist before, obviously, because it did. We've been a worldwide world, or business has been worldwide for decades,
nearshore and offshore models.
But not to say that hasn't already happened, but now that our teams are no longer centralized in a physical location, that used to be like other departments would be across the country, or across town, but now it's like my business partner might be in Mexico, in a different time zone, in a different area altogether. So it's knowing, being cognizant of those things is just really important, and a new soft skill to develop.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. And as we talk about the future of software development, which is, we've kind of been talking about the future of software development. We've kind of covered like what's been going on the last, arbitrarily 4, 5, 6 years. But as we talk about the future of software development and how it will continue to impact the job market, we bring up things like the rise of low code and no code solutions, and the abilities for companies to get ahead and advance using those tools, right? And candidates out there who are looking for jobs, having somewhat of those skills, and almost being able to answer any type of citizen developer like questions that they're going to get asked in an interview, if they're not necessarily going after a software development position. Those initiatives still might be important to the department that they're going in.
Right.
There's always companies always have to have their finger on security and privacy, especially if they're housing any customer data or end user data, right? So just increasing the the initiatives that are around security and privacy, and job candidates out there that have security under their belt, and privacy, and businesses that are looking for that and putting those in job descriptions. Probably going to see a little bit more of that over the years, especially with iOS 14 and other advancements that I'm sure Google's going to be making, and Apple will just continue to make. Internet of Things, IoT of Things, as we have more and more devices, and more and more smart homes with smart vacuum cleaners and smart trash cans, and smart devices
smart trash cans.
that get initiated when you say the S word or the G word, which we won't mention because a few might pop up around here.
Yeah.
But yeah, smart lawnmowers, right? Smart snow blowers, right? As these devices all become, all created and produced and manufactured and start to go in people's homes, there's a handful of devices that are going to be, at people's fingertips. So,
do you think that Lowe's is going to start repoing smart lawnmowers?
Oh, I guess so. If you did
if they pay Ford for the patent,
if they pay for the license, or maybe they get out in front of Ford and get their patent in there first.
Yeah, maybe the patent is only for vehicles, not because even the what is that driving lawnmower? I don't think that's considered like a vehicle necessarily. Or is it?
I wonder what it's called. Riding lawnmower?
Yeah, riding lawnmower.
I wonder what it's classified as.
Yeah. Because you
wouldn't
don't
be an ATV either.
You don't need a license to use it. Although, do you, right? Like, or is it just considered one of those things that's an illegal?
I have one. I think it has a sticker on it. I wonder if it says you have to be 16 to operate. But I don't think.
But is that a law or
maybe a suggestion?
Suggestion, yeah. Plus, like when you're on your private property, laws are different in most places. So you can do certain things on your own property.
I don't know, maybe I'll try. I'll have my 5-year-old cut grass this summer.
There you go.
We'll see
I'll be there to film it. And I'll have 911 ready.
Maybe we'll do that podcast episode from the patio outside. They'll be cruising around in the background.
What's the number to Child Protective Services?
That's funny. Artificial intelligence, right? Machine learning, right? This made the list for obvious reasons, right? But the future, right? The job market is likely going to be relatively flooded, I would assume, here with AI-related positions. Not necessarily software developers, but you talk about positions that AI could overtake in software development. Those positions need to be thought of. Need to be created. Job descriptions need to be written for them. Companies need to hire for them, right?
Yeah. Not to go on a big tangent or anything, but there's kind of a fear of AI like taking over software development jobs. This started with there's a product from GitHub called Copilot, where basically you can give it a prompt and it will write a piece of code for you. So like retrieve all tweets from the user at wearemoonello, for example. And it would go in and write that code and like produce an API and stuff like that. So it's really handy stuff. But I don't think we're at the point right now where that AI is overtaking like a full developer job. But 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line or sooner, maybe it gets that smart. I mean, we're going to kind of talk about this next, but with quantum computing, and maybe we'll just bring it up now, quantum computing is part of that emerging technology. Once that becomes usable by consumers and businesses, and not just like for research purposes, like the computing power and the time that it takes to compute things just exponentially changes, such that like decryption or encryption that might have taken a hacker to 10,000 years literally of computing time to hack, with quantum computing could be reduced to like seconds or minutes. Right. And so you think of like how powerful it is, add that onto AI, and maybe we do get to a point where your junior developer who's just like changing colors on buttons and stuff like that can just be an AI program that you've built or purchased.
Right. And that junior developer becomes more of a prompt engineer.
Yeah. And that's exactly the point I was kind of getting to is, it doesn't change. It doesn't, just because there's something there taking that particular job, it doesn't mean that people aren't able to do other things, or that a job isn't required to implement those things,
to oversee it, to manage it, to maintain it, to improve on it, to check on security, to monitor it. Right.
Yeah. We had talked about this briefly before the show, but like when the car industry came and started making cars, what happened to all the people who were breeding horses and making carts and buggies and stuff like that? They didn't just like, it wasn't just all of a sudden the economy collapsed. They shifted, they changed, they started working for those companies, and they started doing other things with their craft or their skill, or the market probably went from horses being like usable for workload, and it suddenly became a recreational thing.
Yep.
Recreational things are more expensive than things that are just used for everyday work. So, maybe things started increasing and being better for those people. So I mean,
Right.
there's just because a new and emerging thing comes out and changes the job market doesn't mean that the economy collapses or that like
Right.
developers are suddenly never going to have a job. You just shift. You now are a prompt engineer, or you now get to focus on much more complicated problems than just changing colors of buttons.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. And as we talk about quantum computing and emergent technologies and AI and emergent technologies, we often talk about blockchain, right, and how blockchain provides transparency and other useful utilities to businesses or to end users, right, from a trust factor. So while AI is kind of taking the front seat, and blockchain and VRAR and VRAR and MR have kind of not taking the back seat, but AI is kind of taking the front seat.
Yeah, they've kind of been pushed a little bit back
right
behind what AI is doing right now.
Right. So there's also blockchain. We talked about that, and then open source software, right? Which all of us use open source software. There's likely we've brought ChatGPT up a handful of times. That's likely using pieces of open source software.
I mean, every website that you visit uses chunks of open source. Like every company that designs software probably uses some sort of open source bundle for something.
Yeah. Right. And then as we talk about, discussing how businesses can prepare for these changes and how they can stay ahead. Maybe they're already ahead, but how can they get further ahead, right? A big thing for us is, having a culture of innovation, right? So we're constantly digging up new stuff. We're constantly, spending a little bit of time here and there, checking it out, rolling up our sleeves. We don't kind of turn a blind eye to kind of new things that are coming out. It's hard to stay on top of all the new things that come out because new things come out, every
day,
every 18 seconds. So it's kind of interesting how we kind of pick and choose what we want to kind of dig into, right? Because it's always a good thing when new things come out and you kind of get your hands around it and get your eyeballs on it, right? Because you never know a client or a business that could utilize it.
It could change the entire way that you do your business.
Exactly.
It could shift what your product is altogether, and you don't figure those things out if you don't give people the room to do that exploration.
Right. So we talk about that culture, and then of course investing in research and development, right? Not necessarily just like spending time, but potentially even like giving your team a space, right, to do some research and development, more or less like a thinking office or some type of hey, we go here and it's one whole wall is whiteboard paint, and we're gonna come up with some cool ideas and maybe run an incubator out of here, right?
Yeah, I've heard of companies offering like an hour of work. An hour of your work each week can be dedicated towards either a personal project or some collaborative project. Not personal, but like a personal company project, really, where you just you don't think about your current workload, your current work. You just try to do something different, something new, or something that you're interested in instead of something your boss is telling you to do.
I think Google had that mandate at some point,
that sounds
or if they still do it,
familiar.
Like one of your 5 days of work or whatever, or 8 of your 40 hours or whatever is dedicated towards that.
Yeah.
Or something. I don't know. We'd have to look it up. Building agile and flexible teams is a big one. How to stay ahead or how to get ahead if your team isn't agile or flexible. That's likely something that you as a business or your company will want to certainly take part in so you can get ahead.
Yeah.
There's a lot of agile and flexible teams out there. Embracing partnerships and collaboration. So a lot of times teams or businesses don't have the ability to they can't poke their head up out of what they're doing. They're stuck in the weeds. They're in the trenches. They're always there. They do great work. They have great client relationships, right? So in those situations, be on the lookout for collaborations or partnerships with other companies who are, going ahead, innovating, have a culture of innovation and are setting time aside for R&D, right?
That's interesting. Like not every company needs to be your enemy, really, even if you're in the same space. Just because you are competitive in other areas doesn't mean that you can't
Right.
kind of share and innovate together in mutual ways.
Other companies have, strengths and weaknesses that are different from yours. So, yep, that's important. And then, of course, always focusing on customer needs, right, and end user, right, especially if we're talking about software platforms, right. If we're, talking about other things, end user needs aren't necessarily that important, but from a software perspective, right, they're always thinking about end users.
Well, who's going to buy your stuff if your user doesn't like your stuff?
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, yeah, that's our episode for today. We talked about the changing landscape of software development, how it's kind of evolved over the last 4, 5, 6 years, what to look for in the future. Kind of the threads are the same. There's the major change in AI that's happening with OpenAI. The skills businesses need to hire for software development space. There's a lot of inner workings and themes that are going on and candidates for software development. Hopefully we covered those for you, and then we discussed the future. Yeah.
Hey, what's in the future for next time's episode?
I think talking about leaderboards and rewards and gamification, which is a big topic. So we're going to be covering that next.
So like our stuff.
Like our stuff.
Because it feels good.
And we like it when you like our stuff.
Right, because it's gamified.
Yep. Yeah, bet you didn't know that.
Yeah. We'll talk about that some other time. Later.
That we will. Thank you.
Bye.